Great. So good morning. Happy August to everyone. Welcome to the Data Privacy Show with Dave and Greg. Whitney is not here today, so it's just going to be the two of us. I apologize for my voice. My voice today is brought to you by wildfires. Unfortunately. So let's jump right into our agenda, hopefully. I was supposed to advance to the next slide. Okay, it just did it several times. Oh no, we don't have a slide that lists the whole agenda for the day. We're just gonna jump right in. First of all, our first item is related to the guidebook that we have promised you that we've been working on. And it is almost ready. We are just having to deal with some various publishing issues, essentially. One question that came up from it, though, is we've been planning on having both an electronic version and a hard physical copy that you will be available for free, I guess. I don't know that anyone has thought that part out. Where we take it to a printer and it gets printed out. That is a big part of the holdup since we developed it with hyperlinks and things like that. So the first question I have for all of you, and if you can just answer in the chat, is that of value to you? Do you want a hard copy of the handbook, or would you just use the electronic copy exclusively? Are there people who want a physical copy to be able to page through and refer to? If you could just take a second in the chat and give us your thoughts and feedback on that. Otherwise, if we're posting it on the website, that raises the ADA compliance issues and getting it so that it's acceptable in that regard. So either way, there's work that needs to be done, but it does seem from the little bit we're seeing in the chat that electronic is the format most of you are interested in having it in. Just to help us know, focus our efforts so we can get it out to you as soon as possible. Okay, Greg, why don't you talk about the status of the licensure course?
So the licensure course is pretty much finished. Just waiting to get feedback from Whitney, who will be back tomorrow, and then making adjustments accordingly. And we're trying to figure out a way to track everyone that takes the course. There's a few options, still looking into those, but as soon as that gets done, we'll send the Canvas link out to everyone so that you can, if you want to use it as a part of your own course, you can download that into Canvas and kind of adjust it to your needs. And for those that don't use Canvas for
their LMS,
yeah,
or at all.
Well, for your teacher training, yeah. The next option would be to just use the videos that we made. All of these links that we have, or all the things in the modules you see there, pretty much just have videos in them. Those videos are available to you. If we go to the next slide, you can find them at USBE Media, teacher training course.
On YouTube.
On YouTube, yes. And if we're going to send those videos out, probably as a Google folder as well, because I know some of you just need the YouTube link, so we wanted to put them on YouTube for that reason, because I know a lot of you use Safe Schools and stuff like that, and you can just insert the link. But if you actually want the file instead of just a link, we can get that to you. Just let me know. We might just send that out along with a bunch of the other stuff that we're going to be sending out to you guys later. So any questions about any of the, we had a few people ask about that. Yeah, it's I think it's already shared to Canvas Commons. I would have to send out the link of what it's called, but I'd have to look that up. I can't remember. But yeah, I think it is in Canvas Commons already because I made it a publicly available course. So thanks for that question.
Okay, let's talk about some model documents that we have put together based on changes in that came from Senate Bill 207 this last legislative session. The first one, and both of these would have been sent out in our email yesterday, so if you haven't taken a look at them, please do, and provide us any feedback you might have if you have any concerns. The student data collection notice, what the law says is you need to post publicly, so again, I believe this just needs to be on your website somewhere, a list of all the data that you are intending to collect this year, and classifying it as necessary, which basically means you need it in order to fulfill a federal or state mandate. And you also need to then, if there's any that you are doing that are optional, you will need to add those. Our model is based on basically the classes of data we receive through UTREX, so the ones we know you are giving to us, and that would fall under the necessary for federal or state. If you are aware of any other data collections you might be doing, one that comes to mind is simply probably photographs, since you don't send those to us, but those are a part of the yearbook, for example. Those could be included in there as well. And the idea would be that you simply just have to make this publicly available, most likely somewhere on your LEA website. Now, the other part which got a little confusing in the law is it wanted to use it not just as a notice, but also as an opt-in form. The model does have this at the end, but we've also included it as a separate document because we feel that most of you will probably treat them separately. The change in SB 207 that was requested by USHE was to have the ability for you all to give us the contact information for students in grades 9 through 12 to be able to send to USHE so that they could then send out higher education outreach information to get kids into college. This is an opt-in program, and so the model document is basically an explanation of what the program is, what data are going to be shared for what purpose, and then at the bottom, a place where a parent could sign it. We are hoping in the future to be able to work with you to automate this better, possibly making it a part of the registration process. This is where we're at with it right now, is so you have a form that you could use to send home with the kids and ultimately collect their consent. The next step is going to be figuring out how you're going to get the information to us. It's most likely going to be through an Excel spreadsheet until we can automate it a little bit better, probably through UTREX. Some of the information they want, like contact information, we don't currently collect through UTREX. We collect some parts of it. Some things like the student's email address we don't have, and so it would take time to modify everything in UTREX to be able to make that happen. So those model documents are available for you to start using, and in the next month or two, we'll be coming up with basically the procedure to give us the data once you've collected all of the opt-ins. Any questions or comments regarding these two documents that anyone wants to make now? Or if not, you're again more than welcome to look them over and just contact us by email, and we can go that way as well. Okay. Another document we sent yesterday was related to an October 1 rule. We will be checking certain things related to compliance with the Student Data Protection Act and R277487. So there is a spreadsheet, and I tried to make it fairly clear, like here's the item we want to see, here's what we asked for last year, here's how it's different this year. In some ways, I think we took as much feedback as we could from you to try and make it work a little more smoothly. And then there should also be, there's a column in the spreadsheet that explains the support that USB intends to give. Again, we're trying to come at it from a philosophy that we can take care of a lot of work at the state level to make it a little bit less for you all to do. One thing that is worth noting, and it's in red in the document, I'm putting in red here, is that there has been in the past, and this was in board rule, a requirement for an IT security plan. We have been in talks with UEN about whether that is the correct way to approach this. So we are currently proposing changing that board rule. The Student Data Protection Act also required certain changes related to language that needs to be in there for records retention in your data governance plan. But the board has to make a rule for that first. I don't believe we're going to have either of that rule approved by October 1. So it's very unfair to you to expect you to have like something to do with it only to have to change it after the fact. So basically we have decided that these two elements we are not going to check for October 1. Once those rules have been passed by the board, we will probably come up with a different date to give you enough time to get into compliance with it. Okay, and speaking of board rules, so we do have a couple that the Student Data Protection Act mandated that the board create. And we've been trying to get feedback. Like I said, we were talking with UAN about what IT security requirements should look like for LEAs. There is also the requirement for defining significant data breaches. So both of those rule changes will be before the Law and Licensing Committee on Friday. For those of you who don't know, the current way our board functions is usually they meet on 2 days. And on the first day, it's the whole board meeting. And the second day is the committee meeting. So the committee has to approve this first. And the reason it happens second is because they want to have a month to be able to get feedback from their constituents. In the past, it used to be the committee met on Thursday and then the board met on Friday, meaning it could be less than 24 hours for something to be approved. So that is to say that these rules at the soonest would be approved sometime in September. So if you have concerns with the language we are proposing, you have plenty of time to provide us that feedback or to provide your own board member that feedback. I want to show the exact language since this is already publicly available on the board's website. So for significant data breaches, the Student Data Protection Act basically said the board needs to define what that means. And one of the reasons we were trying to come up with a definition of data breach when we were proposing changes as part of SB 207, and a lot of LEAs gave us concerns that it would be, the definition applied to too many very small kinds of things, specifically concerns of like one student looks over another, like the teacher's or another student's shoulder at their computer, and that would constitute a data breach that would have to be reported, and that would just, I mean, that happens hundreds of times a day in a large district. It was unrealistic. So we compromised and said, well, you only need to report ones that are significant. And then the legislature said, but the board's going to have to define what significant is. So again, we tried to make it somewhat flexible. We didn't want to be very prescriptive and say, you know, like it's a certain number of records, especially because that would be a little more punitive for perhaps smaller districts to very quickly reach a threshold. So we simply said, it's any breach where there's a large number of student records compromised. And what large number means is kind of really up to you. I think you should have a sense of like, oh, this was a big breach, we should report it. But also we recognize that not all data breaches are concerning by the size of them, it's the actual content of the records as well. So the second part is sensitive records are compromised that we're aware of. I mean, I would think that would definitely include 504, IEPs, other, like, even if it was just like 2 or 3 students, if that information was breached, then within your own judgment of how you would interpret this rule, that should probably be reported. And then we threw C on just basically to cover the rest of the bases to say data breach an LEA deems to be significant based on the surrounding circumstances. So that's the definition, and then later in the rule when it says the specific responsibilities of an LEA, we're modifying the language to say an LEA shall report all significant data breaches of student data either by the LEA or by third parties. Previously, it was just if a third party breached. Our board wanted to have a requirement that LEAs, at least these significant ones, get reported so they're aware of them by third parties to the superintendent within 10 business days of the initial discovery of the significant data breach. So I'm hoping a lot of that is general and flexible enough, but still providing enough direction to know which ones you need to report to the board, to report to Whitney so that we are aware of it and can provide assistance or something along those lines. So again, if you have any feedback, you're welcome to provide that in the chat, or again, you can give it to us through email after the fact. The other part that's, I think, fairly significant to LEAs relates to IT security. So previously, it said an LEA shall provide the superintendent with a copy or link to the LEA's Information Technology System Security Plan. And the definition gave like a list of various things that was based on some security framework that, in discussing with our IT security and with UEN, everyone felt that it was probably overkill, certainly for even just like a charter school. And so this is what came out of our discussions with UEN as what we felt were the best practices, what the standard really should be. So what it would be, and it wouldn't be October 1 this year, because like I said, the soonest that this would be approved would be September. And so that wouldn't give you enough time to really follow through. We would figure out what would be a reasonable date for you to be able to accomplish it. But the evidence we would like to see is that you have adopted the CIS controls are a very, I think, a good framework to start at for IT security, or again, a comparable IT security framework. But that was our feeling that was more valuable than like creating your own plan, would be to demonstrate that, you know, there is an accepted standard out there in IT security that you have adopted. CIS controls kept coming back as like a good place to start for those who haven't done it, but we wanted, again, to give you the flexibility that if you didn't want to use the CIS controls, you were welcome to demonstrate that you were following an equally rigorous framework. Another thing UAN wanted was that we make it official, and that the LEA designates someone as the information security officer, even if it is just in title only. And we imagine in many cases this will just be the technology director or the IT director. But making it official does provide, I think it looks very good. I don't know, I wasn't part of that conversation.
Well, they were talking about, especially if there's a data breach or something, they need to know the person that they need to go to. And
yeah.
The data manager isn't necessarily that person. So it just helps clarify whose role that is and who they need to go to for specific things. And
yeah,
another reason why they said that is because if somebody has that role, then the district or the school will take security a little more seriously.
Yeah.
So
it sounds good.
Yeah, exactly.
We have an information security officer.
Yeah.
And then the third one, and this is one I very much want to get your feedback on, because this is what UEN would like, was evidence that the LEA has received an external IT security audit, which we imagine most likely would be through UEN, your security test, pen test, within the past 3 years. I don't know financially how challenging that will be. So definitely, if that is unreasonable, we need to know about it. But that was the year range they felt was pretty reasonable to have it checked, essentially.
And they said once every 3 years, specifically for the purpose of like funding. It might be hard to get those funds they recommended every year it should be tested.
That would be great.
Every year or two, and we know that can't happen. And so they said at least every 3 years is kind of the industry standard. And this is something that Whitney is looking into as well, in terms of funding, of maybe asking the legislator in the future for funding for this particular purpose. That is something, yeah.
Yeah, this was the big question. I think the first two was just like, fine, yeah, we'll say we have a framework and we'll work on it and we're trying to do better and just give someone a title. But yeah, this is the one where it's very unclear. Can UEN handle this, and can you all handle this? Yeah, I think Andrew says it's a good idea, but it does put a burden on this.
And he also mentioned, can UEN do a district every 3 years? they are pretty well loaded with doing these type of tests all year long, and it depends on the size of the school or the district, which is going to take, depends on how long they're going to take. They said that they can do a lot, but I don't know. That's definitely a question that we need to ask, because we know that they are the cheapest and maybe the best option for a lot of us. So we'll have to be in talks with them and to see how we can get more of those done through them.
Okay. Jason pointed out that the language that is in the board rule that we have here, it says an external IT security audit. And wants to know if we have reconciled whether a security assessment and pen testing meets the definition of an audit. I don't think that's a good catch, Jason. I don't believe that anywhere in like the definition section we provide a definition of what we mean when we say external IT security audit. I know we were certainly thinking security assessment, pen test. I don't know where that language. I mean, I might have written that without just thinking. But I mean, are they very different in your mind, Jason? If you can elaborate a little bit.
Can I unmute and talk on the call?
Yes, please do.
So the term audit has a lot of different meanings, and like you said, it probably isn't defined up in the document. My concern was just one of those. For example, we got pen testing, but didn't have the assessment, or vice versa.
Yeah.
Going to meet that, and where we talk about EPS and 3 years, so it's got a financial burden. It seems like these are the types of questions we need to ask in advance.
Definitely.
Everyone knows what to ask for.
That's a really good point, because yeah, if you just had one every 3 years but not the other necessarily, would you technically be meeting the requirement? Well, thank you, Jason. Like I said, good catch. We will definitely make a note of that and figure out what it should look like. And again, please, this was the one I realized would be the most, not necessarily controversial, but the one with the biggest questions. And I think was it Andrew? I think said it very well. It's a good idea, but like it's going to be a burden, and it's unclear if that's a reasonable burden. If it's gonna, I think, be a lot of bang for the buck. If that number could be changed. If we could hold off on that requirement until we can secure more funding from the legislature for this sort of thing. If it's just another unfunded mandate that's going to be basically impossible to fulfill. I think it would help if you could give us some idea, because again, we don't know. Like, with what frequency are you currently having these kinds of things done? If you could email us that, that I think again could give us kind of a baseline for where we're at versus where we should be. So again, thank you for all of your feedback on that. We will we'll see what we can explain to the board as to what that requirement should end up looking like. Okay, another thing we're sharing with the Law and Licensing Committee on Friday is our annual data privacy and security report, where basically we just kind of give an overview of what we did this year, and we wanted to make you aware because we talk about all of you. And ultimately, the requirements we looked at last October, you'll recall I did it right before our data privacy conference. We surveyed all of you, and one of the big questions was, what is your biggest challenge? What do you need the most help with? So we did include the top results of that, so the board is aware. And for those of you who don't recall, I believe the first two items, the most common responses was, we don't have enough time to do this, and we don't have enough money. So that they will be aware of that giant limitation, and hopefully they can include that in their priorities when they go to the legislature this next year. is hopefully find more ways to alleviate the time that these things take, as well as hopefully get more funding for LEAs to be able to comply with these sorts of things. Then we also do include a list of well, essentially the percentages that we were able to get something back from. And I would say, I mean, again, it's very, it's hard to say. What is 77%? Is that good? Is that about where we should have been? I'm sure some board members will feel concerned that it was anything less than 100%. But we wanted to make you aware that they will potentially be talking about that on Friday, and hopefully not make any bad decisions based on it. Okay, big thing I wanted to talk about that is hit the news and is potentially is going to affect us here in Utah. So the New York Times published an article this weekend called For Sale, Survey Data on Millions of High School Students. And so what this relates to as far as Utah is concerned is when the ACT is given, you might be aware there is a pre-test survey that is optional. One problem is not everyone necessarily realizes that it's optional.
Including the teachers.
Including the teachers, maybe. The other issue is, and this is one we were aware of last year and we worked with ACT, is that it violates PPRA and Utah FERPA in that it is asking for two things on the prohibited list without parental consent, and that is the student's religious affiliation and their parents' income. So last year, and hopefully this is how it actually went, we didn't get to observe, the teachers were supposed to inform the students as they were taking the test that they were not to answer those questions. It is only with written parental consent under Utah FERPA that we can solicit their religion or their income. Now, the Times article focused a lot more on what ACT does with these survey results. And we have been aware for some time that they do sell them to universities. This is a big part of ACT's business model. And you can understand the appeal. If you are a university that wanted to find, Black Catholic students because with high grades and where the parents had decent income, you can buy that list from ACT. And then you can start trying to focus your recruiting efforts on them, and then maybe you can diversify your school a little bit more. Now, part of SB 207 changed a line. It was very subtle in statute that basically said that the student could consent. So if the student said, filled out the survey, that would be good. The legislature changed their mind on that and specifically said, no, but it has to be parental consent. But then basically gave them the right to go and sell it if they got the parental consent, is the way it is now. Now, ACT and SAT do not exclusively sell to universities, and this is what the newspaper article mostly focused on, is they end up selling to a lot of organizations that they feel a little bit like a scam. Organizations with names like the National Academy of Future Science and Technology Leaders. And they invite you to their summit based on, it's an honor to be invited because your scores are so good. And this will help you get a leg up on getting into college and just fly out on your own expense. And the tuition is $900, but you'll get to hear from all these great speakers. And it was interesting. We were going to some of the websites for these companies this morning, and it's like what people are saying, and they have all their testimonials. And how many of the testimonials began with, so originally I thought this was a scam, but then when I came, I was blown away. And now we're going to invite, my son wants to invite all his friends to come next year. And these are the kinds of groups ACT is selling the student data to. And I don't think that's something that parents or students have been aware of. And so this is starting to get a lot of national exposure. We're not sure where it's going to go at the national level. I can tell you from speaking with our college prep, our college testing, whatever her title is in assessment, Rebecca, that she is. So we shared this article with her. She is aware of it, and we are already beginning to talk with ACT about this, as well as, like I said, SB 207, which is going to change which changed it so that a student couldn't give their consent. It had to be parental consent. So we're not sure what this is going to look like come February and March when you're preparing to administer the ACT to students. We're not sure if there will be a survey at all, or again, if it will just be kind of limited. But we're imagining that it isn't just going to be Utah that will be pushing back on ACT. It's going to be every state that is contacted with them. That is not me on the stage. That is someone at the Congress of Future Science and Technology Leaders in Lowell, Massachusetts, which I was not invited to. I might have said no to it. So we wanted to make you aware. It's a pretty big education privacy story. Like I said, come ACT time, February, March, you might need to be involved in those discussions and let teachers know what they're supposed to do, what is optional, what everything means when a kid takes one of these surveys. Okay, and last thing, if you're interested in more fun privacy tidbits like that, we are again planning to have our annual data conference, one in Salt Lake City on November 6th, and one again at the SUU campus in Cedar City on November 7th. We will be giving more information about that in the coming months, about who will be speaking and what topics. Certainly, if there are topics that you think are of value, we've come up with some ideas of presentations we think would be good. If there's something you want to see, please let us know. We will find the best speaker we can to address that topic. And this is for you. We want to make it informational and helpful for you to do your jobs.
Or if there's something you want to present on,
yes,
let us know. We'd love to hear what you guys are doing in the districts. I think last year we had Ogden, but
Ogden and Weber
presented, and we kind of worked with both of those.
A little bit from Jordan as well.
Yeah. But we don't work with everyone as much as we did with them, so we'd love to hear what you guys are doing. And
we'd love for Jason to give a presentation on reconciling security assessment and pen testing with the definition of audit.
Moving from rural to the big city.
That would be great, Jason, if you'll do that.
And going from that to Murray.
Okay, so we're still here. It would be fun, Jason. It would be a lot of fun. Any other things we can address? That's our last slide. That's it for us. If you have any other questions or comments or concerns, we'll stick around for a few minutes and or again, just email us after the fact. If you didn't get any of the materials that I talked about, send me an email. I'll make sure that you have them. We sent them out in an email yesterday, so I'm hoping everyone has them. And again, we are very interested in your feedback. We want to make them work for you, not the other way around. All right, I think we're going to close it then. So thank you very much for your time and attention this morning, and we'll see you all next month.